You know, to quote Roger Ebert about this movie, Batman Begins is the fifth Batman movie in the film series, but the first one to get it right. Absolutely right. The film is directed by Christopher Nolan, who cleverly weaves together a story of woe, of sorrow, of atmosphere built around the character of Batman, which was really the biggest issue I had with the other movies, is that they were not really about Batman. They got so wrapped up in how flashy that they could make the villain, it just seemed like Batman became an afterthought after a while. As the title would suggest, this is an origin story of the Dark Knight, told through the eyes of Bruce Wayne from his childhood, from his traumatic childhood, up until his adulthood as the Batman. He travels to a mysterious eastern Himalayan region where he trains under the guidance of Ra's al Ghul, played by Liam Neeson. I don't really think I'm giving much away because, honestly, everyone who has seen this movie knows the twist, and everyone who knows someone who has seen this movie probably knows the twist that Liam Neeson is actually Ra's al Ghul. He goes under the disguise of Ducard, who is another character from the comics, but in reality, the Ken Watanabe character was just a decoy Ra's al Ghul. The League of Shadows teaches Bruce Wayne to embrace theatricality, deception, and the power of invisibility and stealth to eventually hone the skills that would later be necessary for him to become the Batman, which he sees as this monster inside of him that he can use to take vengeance on the criminal underworld after his parents were unjustly gunned down before his eyes in a common street mugging. Gotham City in this one being this corrupt, criminal-run armpit of a city. After 7 years abroad, Bruce Wayne finally comes back to Gotham, retakes his position at Wayne Enterprises, while at the same time using assets available to him, he was able to take on the alter ego of the Batman and fight crime. However, Batman has to contend with this mysterious new drug that is being passed around by the criminal underworld led by Carmine Falcone, who is working with a doctor at Arkham Asylum, Dr. Jonathan Crane, who is later revealed to be the supervillain known as the Scarecrow, and the manufacturer of said drug. In addition to that, Batman has to contend with the League of Shadows, who he left behind and presumably disbanded after his falling out with them due to a disagreement in ideals. Christian Bale takes over as the most intense Batman to date, really capturing all of the different facets of Bruce Wayne that would be necessary here. You really needed a powerhouse actor for this type of role who goes through all of these very visible changes throughout the movie. And Christian Bale definitely brought his A game to that. He is so good at portraying the many different sides of Bruce Wayne, from the warrior to the outcast to the disturbed young man to the billionaire playboy. All of these different sides of Bruce Wayne, Christian Bale seems to play effortlessly. He is given a much better script than the other actors who have played Batman, i.e. Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney, because again, this script actually revolves around Batman. This script provides for an interesting character study that delves into the psychological and philosophical aspects of being Batman, what it would take, and it really provides a spiritual reason for Bruce to become Batman. And that is probably one of the things that makes this movie the most engrossing Batman to date. Christian Bale is also supported by an all-star cast of actors. Liam Neeson, again, as Ra's al Ghul. Ken Watanabe is the decoy. Michael Caine as Alfred. Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, the supplier of Batman's technology. You have Gary Oldman as Lieutenant Gordon. I almost said Commissioner Gordon there, but he's just a lieutenant at this point. You have all of these great actors who honestly rival the fantastic cast of the original Richard Donner Superman movies. All of these actors make great use of the material given to them, but despite this being somewhat more ensemble than previous Batman movies, none of these characters are completely uninteresting. None of these characters, while remaining interesting, overshadow the main character. There is never a doubt who the main character is in this movie. And you also have Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow and Tom Wilkinson as Carmine Falcone. These guys do fantastic in their roles. Michael Caine is a much sterner Alfred than Michael Gough. He has much more of an initiative this time around. Gary Oldman is basically the same. He's basically the same in comparing his portrayal of Gordon to Pat Hingle's. Gordon is a much more active part of the story this time around, which definitely suits the character. I think Gordon is best when he is out there with Batman, and he is proving himself as a very active and capable figure of the law. Gordon is a very strong supporting character in this, and a lot of that has to do with Gary Oldman's fantastic performance. Gary Oldman may just be the best screen Gordon we've ever had. Actually, no, there's no doubt in my mind. Gary Oldman is the best. And Michael Caine, as much as I liked Michael Gough in the previous movies, Michael Caine is the best screen Alfred we've had. And Morgan Freeman and Tom Wilkinson, they don't really get a whole lot to do in the grand scheme of things, but again, they are great when they're there. They lend so much gravitas to what one would normally consider to be minor roles. And Cillian Murphy is the Scarecrow. He is just so creepy, but without going completely over the top. He really does find a nice balance between the crazier, crackpot side of Scarecrow and the more subtle, dapper, almost creepily charming side of Scarecrow. He is great as a character, and you would be hard pressed to find someone to top Cillian Murphy's performance. Cillian Murphy is one really gifted actor, and he does a really good job. Liam Neeson also bringing so much wisdom and simultaneously so much intensity to the role of Ra's al Ghul. I know the proper pronunciation is Ra's al Ghul, but I'm not going to complain because the character is still portrayed beautifully here by Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson, that is very, very inspired casting. And at this point, Liam Neeson was getting kind of typecast as these mentor figures, because he played Qui-Gon in Star Wars, who trained Obi-Wan Kenobi. Liam Neeson a lot of the time is cast as this wise old mentor figure, and to see him kind of go radically against type, while at the same time kind of going in type, in that Ra's al Ghul is the primary villain of the movie, is pretty refreshing. And Liam Neeson is so great as the villain in this. Like I said, you would be hard pressed to find someone who would do a better job as Ra's al Ghul than Liam Neeson. He's honestly perfect. He's perfect for the role of Ra's al Ghul. I mean, he possesses the right amount of. You really get the sense that he has this enormous intellect, while at the same time, these demented aspirations sound very scary coming from his mouth. But they also sound very dignified and very almost necessary. This is certainly the darkest of the Batman movies in terms of the atmosphere and even the color palette and the set design. This is a much more gritty and realistic take on the Dark Knight. And before you say, well, there are so many things in Batman that could be considered too comic book-y, specifically in the way of some of the characters, like the Scarecrow and the Batsuit, and Gotham City and a lot of the fight scenes. But thankfully, they get around this. I mean, the set design and a lot of the costumes are really in this realm of almost hyper-reality. You can tell that they are somewhat stylized in the sense that they contain this kind of urban grit. A lot of Gotham City looks very grimy, grungy. They really made Chicago look like this very, very dark and unwelcome place in this movie. I mean, Gotham City has never looked more foreboding than it does in this movie. It's not quite stylized to the point of Tim Burton's Gotham City, but it is more in the vein of an urban crime thriller. which I think is appropriate for, again, the more realistic take that they're going with. If I had a few minor complaints, one of the biggest ones would be Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes, a childhood friend of Bruce's who grows up to be an assistant district attorney and one of the most righteous figures in Bruce Wayne's life. Now, you would think that this would be a strong female character and a good role model, and on paper she is, but the way that they kind of play her, she is so self-righteous, she's a bit of a shrew, and she's just not a very interesting character. She is completely incorruptible. She doesn't really go through any kind of serious character arc. A lot of the time, the way that they try to make her active, she just ends up having to be saved by Batman. So she's not a very good character, so I can't really blame Katie Holmes too much for that. Although, and even then, Katie Holmes does not really do that bad of a job here, or at least not as bad as she is in certain other roles. However, she is without a doubt the weakest link in terms of the acting. If you completely excised her from the story, then I don't really think you would lose much. Not in the way of the drama, not in the way of a character arc for Bruce. Another minor complaint I have in the movie, and this is minor in the grand scheme of things because this really is a fantastic movie, but said minor complaint is a lot of the fight scenes are filmed too close up. They are edited way too rapidly. There are too many quick cuts, and a lot of the time it can be very difficult to tell what is going on. Not so much in the chase scenes, but in the hand-to-hand combat scenes, the fighting looks a little. Actually, no, the fighting looks very, very hard to follow. This may be due to the fact that the Batsuit may not have been the easiest thing to move around in. Maybe they just thought it would look too silly to actually show Batman fighting without having a bunch of quick cuts. Maybe they were trying to keep with the theme of Batman being more of a force of nature, this creature in the night, rather than any kind of man. So I can kind of understand their thought process there, but sometimes you just have to make things more pleasing to the eye. And whatever the reasons for these quick cut action scenes, they really did not pay off in terms of giving the audience a visually pleasing experience. The final minor gripe I have about this movie, and I don't really find this to be a problem personally, but a common complaint I've heard is that the movie essentially feels like two different movies. The first 40 minutes to an hour is basically Bruce Wayne abroad training with the League of Shadows and then coming back to Gotham and preparing for his war on crime. And then the second hour or so is Batman going to war on the criminal underworld and discovering the plots that the Scarecrow has and discovering this grand plan to try and destroy the city. I never really found this to be too much of a distraction. I do admit that it is there, and you will probably notice that the movie kind of shifts in terms of how it feels slightly, but the overall finished package still feels like the same dark and engrossing movie that you paid to see. Really, the only difference is in the second half you see a bit more of Batman than you do with the first half, which that may be a little jarring. The fact that Batman really only shows up in the second half, and when he does show up, it can be a little difficult to actually swallow. At least if you are comparing it to the first half of the movie, which he doesn't really have any kind of role in. Again, I never really found this to be a problem, and overall the movie is just a fantastic origin story for Batman, and it ranks as, in my opinion, one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. It completely nails the character. It puts him in this realistic setting, or this more hyper-realistic setting. The performances are fantastic. The script recognizes that Batman is this very deep, intriguing character, and it takes full advantage of that. You are definitely invested more in the character of Bruce Wayne, which is how it should be. You should not just be going to a Batman movie saying, okay, when is Batman going to show up? This movie allows you to get acquainted with the character of Bruce Wayne. This allows you to go through this very personal struggle with him, and you actually see him grow as a character throughout the movie. This is a character who makes mistakes. He is just starting out as Batman, and he learns from those mistakes, and by the end of the movie you feel that he has really undergone a very important arc. Of course, a lot of that does come from the cast, which again do a spectacular job. The movie is directed with a lot of class and a lot of confidence by Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan being, in my opinion, the ideal person to direct a Batman movie, or at least based on what we've seen. The music by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard is just fantastic. It's not quite, again, as stylish as Danny Elfman's score, but what it lacks in stylistic advantage, it more than makes up for in intensity. This score perfectly suits the movie. It suits the power. It suits the softer moments. It's a very well done score by these two great composers. Overall, again, Batman Begins is still one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite comic book movies. In fact, it might be my favorite comic book movie. In my opinion, it's the best in the trilogy. It's the best in the Batman series. In my opinion, it completely trumps any Batman movie that came before it. In terms of script, in terms of acting, in terms of story, in terms of focus on the main character. The characters themselves are great. The villains are great. I'm so glad that they didn't go over the top. The villains are actually threatening. The main character is threatening. I just really loved this movie. This is a fantastic piece of movie making. It really feels like this journey. It feels like a personal story, a personal journey for the character of Bruce Wayne as he morphs into the character of Batman. And by the end of the movie, it is so fulfilling. It's no wonder people wanted Christopher Nolan to do a sequel, because he did an absolute knockout job of really making the character of Batman identifiable, really grounding him in this sort of hyper-reality. And yeah, what more can I say but watch Batman Begins. It is without a doubt, in my mind, better than any Batman movie that came before it. You may think I'm overselling it, but the minor problems that I and a lot of other people have really do very, very, very little to dampen the overall experience.